Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Joseph, and today I'm going to be showing you some pure CSS parallax examples. So first, what is a parallax? You probably are familiar with older 2D video games, side-scrolling games, and sometimes, on good games anyway, the background will move at a different speed as the foreground as you're scrolling across the screen. And in simplest terms, that's all a parallax is. It's the look that things that are far away are moving slower than things that are close up as you're moving. And so in video games, it's emulated, of course, because video games are fake, they're not real. And on our websites, we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to make it look as though the background is really far away. And I have three examples to show you. One looks really good, but it's complicated and it's not suitable in every situation. One looks almost as good, is a lot simpler, and it works in it's a lot more versatile. And then I'm going to take that simpler one and put it into a page that's even simpler, and we're going to really dive into the simplest of the three examples. Okay, so the first one is the most complex, is the one that looks the best, but it's the hardest to pull off, and it's also the least versatile. This one uses actual 3D CSS transitions and translations, and you'll see it. All right, so here we are. The code is on the left-hand side. It's not overly complex code. We have a little header. We have a little parallax background space. We have some content, another parallax background space, more content, another parallax, another content, another parallax, and finally a footer. So this one has 4 parallax images, 4 backgrounds, and 5 foregrounds, right, to go on all sides of it. So I'm going to scroll down and you'll see what the effect does on this one. Okay, you can see that the background is moving, but it's moving slower than the foreground is. See, the foreground is covering it up as I scroll down and back up. So this one, because it's vertical lines, it's not maybe the best example for that. But I wanted to show it to you because choosing the right background for your parallax is, of course, important, right? If you choose a background like this, your parallax motion is going to be lost on a lot of people. So try and choose a different background that has, there we go. I think one of my images might have not shown up. Oh no, that's all right. Actually, it's totally fine. I just had 2 paragraphs in there and I forgot about it. Right, so there's my bottom image, right? It's moving 1 image, 2, oh no, 1 of them, 3, yeah, 4 images. Yep. This content area is really long though. So the problem with this particular type, aside from it being a little bit more complicated because it has some 3D CSS effects, is each one of these panels, both the background and the foreground, you'll notice that every one of them, as I'm scrolling, they are 100% viewport height. That is no accident. That is a requirement in order for this to work right. If you try to make panels that are smaller than the viewport, what's going to happen is you're going to see these layers get some overlapping. You're going to see the edges of them. And if you see the edge, that means you're seeing over the edge. Okay, and that doesn't work out so well. So this one, although it is the most beautiful because the images in the background do move at a very good pace, this one is the least versatile because you have to have at least 100% the viewport height in every panel, both foreground and background. That is important for this model. So I'm going to put the link in the description of the video so that you can see the code for this on your own. We're not going to dive into this example. It's a little bit more complex, a little bit too much for this video. But I did want to show it to you and show you what is possible using only CSS. I'll flip my tabs here. I have no JavaScript, and I have only CSS. So I have some plain design stuff here. I have some parallax box stuff here for the images. And then as I go down a little bit farther, this is where I have the transforms, and there's some 3D translates in the Z-axis. And that one gets a little bit more complicated, right? It is basically just a set it and forget it kind of thing, and every panel works exactly the same. But because every panel has to be at least 100% the viewport height, it is the least versatile of these options that I have. So moving on to the next one, the next example here is a little bit simpler of a design, and again, no JavaScript. And moving into the CSS, I have some plain design stuff here, and then down for the parallax, I actually just have the first half of the parallax CSS from the previous example. The previous example was very similar to this. And then this one does all the same stuff, but no 3D transforms. Right, so as I scroll this one, right, the backgrounds, and I can look at multiple backgrounds. See, the advantage of this one is each foreground and background area does not have to be 100% the viewport height. But these ones, you can see that the background is static. It's fixed, actually, right here. We have background attachment fixed in our CSS. That's really the power setting right there. If I had no other settings, this one would get much of the work done by itself. It does all the heavy lifting. And the way our browsers work, I want to say older browsers back in the day, they did not do this. But the way modern browsers work is I have these background attachments fixed. There's no z-index being set. And so as I scroll, the bottom one overwrites the top one as I scroll through the page. Older browsers might layer things differently, and you wouldn't get to see the transition from one image to the next. But modern browsers, for the past few years anyway, have operated this way. And so we can just use multiple sections with a background attachment fixed with either the same image over and over again or different images. I'm using different images so I can really show you what's going on here. But you could use the same image over and over again. Personally, I think if you use the same image over and over again, you kind of lose the effect, because then people realize that obviously it is just a background image that doesn't move. And that is what it is. It's a background image that doesn't move, but we're not setting it on the body element. We're setting it on the individual elements in the content. You could get creative with this, and you can make smaller parallax things, and you can make them look like windows of a house. And then you could have the background be, the Windows XP background or something, and your window could be looking at that. So that is the power lifter right there. And I'm going to take this same example and break it down even simpler in the next example, where I just have a header. I have a little mobile navigation bar that really is not a navigation bar. There's just some links in there that don't do anything. I have some content area down here where I'm going to put content in front of the background. And then I have another little kind of a sidebar area at the bottom, and then a footer again at the bottom. So this is even simpler. It has only one parallax area called Parallax Wrapper. Content goes in there. Content's going to go in front of the parallax on this design. Again, no JavaScript. And then now we can actually dive into the CSS. And here we're going to skip all the page CSS, all the like the grid and things for the header there, and jump all the way down to, this is it, one thing for the parallax wrapper. And we'll go through line by line and see what it says. Right, we have the background attachment fixed. That's going to make this background image fixed position, right? It's not going to move as I scroll the page. That background image doesn't move. To do that, we have to make sure we have some things set. first and foremost, we have to make sure the image is large enough to fit there. Otherwise, we're going to zoom it, and that's actually down here a few lines. Let's cover the other ones first. I have a background color, right? Strictly speaking, I don't need that, but I have set it just in case the image doesn't work. I have something there. Of course, I just have big bright red to say, hey, it's not working. And then background position, center both vertically and horizontally. That's the position of the image in the background. I want it centered. Okay. You could change that, but I want it centered for my image. Background repeat is no repeat. So just in case my image isn't working right, I don't want it to be repeated and show everybody that it really isn't working right. And then the other power lifter here is the background size cover. And what that does is going to perfectly zoom my image so that it covers all the visible area that you're going to see. So it's going to cover it in either direction, vertically or horizontally, depending on the image, whether it's a portrait or a landscape image. The browser will figure it out for me and make sure that it covers the space available in whichever direction it needs to. So it's going to zoom. It's not going to mess around with the aspect ratio. That's another nice thing because we're using a background image. If I have a portrait image and I'm trying to cover a landscape space, it's just going to zoom that horizontal space so that it fits 100% of the width. And then I'll clip the height of it. That's actually what I recommend you use for a parallax image, because as we scroll, you'll see that we have a lot of height that we can see in our image. So using a portrait style image for these parallax backgrounds, is quite ideal for this, because then we can, as we scroll, we'll be able to see that whole portrait. Next line is actually the background image, and I'm getting mine. I'm hosting it on Imgur. And then the next line, I have this box shadow, and I have two inset shadows separated by a comma. One of them is on the top edge, and one of them is on the bottom edge, just to kind of really cement that 3D effect. So it really looks like these orange layers are actually in front of the background image. Right, so I have one box shadow that is inset that is going to be just on the bottom, and then another one that is just on the top. And we do that on this, right on the background itself, because we don't want to mess around with any of the other layers. All of our CSS goes into one thing, right? So if I wanted to create multiple parallax wrappers all with the same image, I would just give them this class name and be done with it. That would be it. All the parallax layers would have that same background image. And in fact, that's exactly what I did on the previous example. The only difference was I gave them all this code, and then I created a first, second, third, and fourth class and gave them all a different background image. That's the only difference. All right, well, that's it. Thanks for watching. All right, take one more look at this really nice one. Okay, there's the super nice one. Again, that's all CSS. All of these were all CSS parallax examples. There's really two examples, but then I took the simple one and broke it down even farther for you. All the links to this will be in the description, so you can check out the code yourself. And thanks for watching.